children. Are you sitting comfortably? Then I'll begin.
Chadbourne, 1976. So, my grandfather had been homeless most of his adult life, ever since him and my grandmother split up in the early 60s. He was a real bad drunk. Every bit of money he made went to beer or liquor. I remember hearing stories about when my dad was young and how he and his siblings would be starving, and they would have been waiting on my grandfather for about 2 days. He would finally arrive after he'd finished his booze and with no food. My father had to quit school at age 11 and start work to help out his family. So when my grandmother finally kicked out my grandfather, he wandered around from town to town looking for work so he could buy his alcohol. Usually between his home of Conway and where his son lived, my dad in Lexington. One day, I guess his relatives had finally gotten tired of his bullshit and threw him out. So he called my dad and asked if he had any work. My dad said he would give him a job and a place to crash if he could get there. It's a little over 200 miles. He said he would be there in about 4 or 5 days, that he was going to have to hitch. So he started walking. My dad always said if something was to be seen, that our family would see it, whether we wanted to or not. On the third night of walking, my grandfather came upon a house about 100 feet off the road in a swampy area. It looked abandoned, so he walked over to it. He figured he could crash there tonight. It would be nice to get out of the rain anyway. He made his way through the swamp, and instead of going through the door like a normal person would, he climbed in through the window. He fell into the bedroom. He looked around the room and he actually saw a bed. It didn't look new or nice by any means of the word, but it was a bed. He flipped the switch on, but no light shone. He decided that would be fine. He patted the dust off the bed the best he could and laid down. As soon as he laid down, all hell broke loose. The lights turned on, and not just in the bedroom, but in the rest of the house. He sat up screaming, "Who is there? What do you want?" But no one answered. He got up, stepped into the hallway, only to see all the doors around him slammed shut. He was trapped. He tried to open every door, but to no avail. He tried to bust out of the hallway into the bedroom, but he couldn't budge the door. All of a sudden, he noticed the attic door had started to open. A large, looming, pale man, almost 7 feet tall, he guessed, started his way down. He laughed. All my grandpa would say is that it was hideous, demented laughter. The man smiled and laughed, and he noticed that the man's teeth were way too big to be real. This man, his laughter, the teeth, he was too pale. He either wasn't real or he wasn't alive. My grandfather busted the kitchen door down, ran through the kitchen and jumped out an already broken window. He ran through the swamp and back to the road. Whoever or whatever that man was didn't follow him, but he could have that house, my grandfather said. He said he would stick to the road.
This happened to me 3 years ago. I was standing at the bus stop wearing headphones, and then, suddenly, the music stopped playing. Before I could reach for the pocket to turn it back on, it started playing again. But during that moment while the music was off, in my ears I felt something like an electric shock. I didn't really pay much attention to it. Wiped off my headphones. I thought it was some glitch. 15 minutes later, I stepped off the bus and saw one scary dude. He was in a white robe and he had a mustache. He just stood there and looked at me. I looked back at him and I went about my business. And that's where it all began. I started seeing this guy everywhere, every day, at bus stops, on the subway, just somewhere on the street. And most importantly, I always saw him in situations when I could not approach him. In the subway, he's always on the opposite escalator. I'm going down, he's going up. The train starts to move. He is standing outside the door. I'm walking on the second floor at the university. He's looking at me through the glass. In all cases, I could never approach him. It lasted for 11 days, and then I saw him again. I was on the tram, and he was standing in the street looking at me through the window. I couldn't stand it anymore, so I shouted to the driver, "Stop! I have to get out now." Although there was no stop there, he stopped. Not taking my eyes off the bastard, I went straight to him. He still stood there quietly and was looking at me. I walked over and I asked, "Who are you? What do you want from me?" In response, he quietly took my hand and began talking. "Come on, good boy. Wake up. Come on, wake up finally." I didn't know what to do. I just stood there. He continued on. "Wake up. Look around. Don't you see what's happening?" He started yelling at me louder and louder. Finally, I broke away and woke up. Everything that I saw shocked me. In reality, at the bus stop, me and 3 other people got hit by a car. And all that time I was in a coma. And everything that was happening to me was some sort of delirium of my brain that was injured in the accident. And that guy that I was always seeing, he was my doctor. For 6 days he had been fighting for my life. When I fully recovered, I told him everything. Strangely enough, he quietly listened to me and said that it was normal. And even when I told him that there, in my pseudo-reality, I supposedly spent 11 days, he replied to me that it was normal too, because when in a coma, the human brain cannot keep track of time. After all of this, for 3 years now, I believe in nothing, and I don't believe anyone. I'm constantly feeling as if I'm still there, or here. I really don't know how to explain it.